Well done, Eleanor Jones. Great start to the day, horse in hand, as always, in the winning frame. I am delighted to be here today and to share with you some thoughts. Being a minister has the job security of your average football manager, and you have a very short time in the sun to try and make changes that you want to see. And I have an endlessly fascinating life, which takes me to different parts of the world, dealing with macro issues like climate change and biodiversity loss, and around this country, meeting some of the most amazing people you could ever meet, not least of all, of course, in the equestrian world. But I find this one of the areas where it is quite hard to be able to, when I do move on, to look back and say, I really moved the dial here. And so what I'm here to do is certainly to share some thoughts with you, but I want to also hear from you about what we can do together to change what needs to be changed, preserve what needs to be preserved, and to say thank you, really, for what is a very uplifting experience, and never more so than last year when Jim and Roly and others invited me to badminton to see one of the elite ends of the equestrian world, but a really fascinating discussion, understanding about animal welfare, rider safety, how equestrian activities can interact with the public, and how we can use the elite end of the sport to encourage the grassroots end as well, and I'll come on to talk about that. I know you've got a fantastic selection of speakers today, and so I won't delay you any further, but I'm delighted once again to attend this National Equine Forum. And if there is one sector I deal with in government, this does seem to have an awful lot of governance in it. And I know there is a sort of mind map somewhere of all these different organisations and how you interact, but the National Equine Forum does seem to me a wonderful way of bringing you all together. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to update you on equine matters that my department is progressing. But before I say anything else, I just want to say a huge congratulations to the way the equine world united around British Equestrians for Ukraine. I know Charlotte is here, and I think what she's done in Poland, supporting, and what you have done to support her, and it's the kind of really inspirational work that does need to be recognised and applauded. And I do thank all organisations who joined with that endeavour to protect horses in Ukraine and the work that they continue to do, sometimes in the most impossible of circumstances. And it's wonderful that that has been recognised. But what a wonderful year for equine sports since the last National Equine Forum. I congratulate Equestrian Team GB on their qualification for the Paris Olympics and the Paralympics, which they achieved at the World Championships in 2022. What a follow-up to the team and individual successes in Tokyo 2 years ago, and a testament to the strength of the GB's teams. I wish them every success in their preparations for Paris next year, and I'm no doubt that we can surpass and repeat those successes. And it's successes like these that provide positive, high-profile role models and generate interest in the equine industry. This goes from beginners learning to ride through to recognising and harnessing top-tier professional talent, be it in sport, racing, or breeding and production. This in turn strengthens the equine industry and contributes to our economic growth. Of course, the riding school sector is facing challenges, and work is ongoing to support this. And I know there's more to come on this today, but there's a really alarming statistic that since 2018, we've lost 16% of our riding schools. And this is the grassroots strength in depth that any sport or any collective group of organisations needs to see thrive. And as the Rural Affairs Minister, I see at first hand how this provides employment, how this provides a wonderful way for people to access the countryside and to do so safely under professional supervision if necessary, and I want to do all I can to help you strengthen this sector and see if we can see an increase in the number of riding schools in the future. It's been quite a year for us at Defra too. Work is progressing well in a number of areas, which will see streamlined processes at our borders and enhanced traceability for equines, supporting welfare, biosecurity and trade. Less glamorous, but vitally important work. And I was in the House of Lords late last night debating the new Northern Ireland agreement, the Windsor framework, and that will clearly have an impact on equine movements. We're about to introduce our new target operated model, which is the way we're going to manage our borders, and we are talking to our colleagues in Wales and Scotland to make sure that, among other things, equine movements to and from Great Britain can continue safely, and that we can have a proper arrangement with our nearest neighbours, and this is really important. So my officials continue to work on with key industry colleagues, including the British Horse Council, on shaping the future of equine policy. And I was very pleased to see the outcome of the consultation on improvements to equine identification and traceability. We have now published the results and government response to this consultation, and work has commenced on detailing the proposals and amending legislation. And when I talked earlier about wanting to move the dial, here's something we really can do. It is incredibly complicated, but it really is vital that we do this. The consultation response report outlines the proposals that my department will take forward. These include digitising more of the system to enable faster updates to the equine database, improving the accuracy of the data that's held there. We'll continue to introduce digital identification for equines, but retaining paper passports alongside that for those that need them, for purebreds, on studbooks, and for, of course, international travel. We're also introducing enhanced traceability by recording where equines are kept, as well as moves to temporary locations. This will provide significant support should there be a disease outbreak, and that is what keeps us all awake at night. The impact of some of the diseases that we know are going around the world, of coming here and affecting not just that grassroots element, but of course elite sporting events as well, and that is really important. So encouraging compliance with the equine identification legislation and looking at new approaches to enforcement is key to developing these policy reforms. We'll be working to establish a range of actions that government, industry, and the two together can take to tackle this. More scanning and ID checking of horses at routine vet visits, shows, and at sales would be valuable. Better education and communications from government and from industry so that owners and keepers understand what the law requires them to do and why will also be absolutely key. The government is also considering fixed penalty notices for non-compliance, and I'd be really interested to hear your views on that. As always, the excellent working relationship and meaningful engagement on this important work is key to making these improvements to identification and traceability. I look forward to seeing this progress and the real benefits that this work will bring. This, of course, links to our ongoing efforts to streamline borders processes. It will provide assurances to our trading partners for international racing, competition, and breeding. Work is continuing apace in designing the new imports regime for equines in line with the government's pledge to use digital technology to streamline processes. This, of course, involves striking the right balance between necessary biosecurity measures to protect our national herd and maintaining GB's high health status to ensure that we remain active for trade whilst reducing the friction and burden of these processes. It's complicated, but we can get this right. We have to apply this balance across a wide range of equine movements, from pet equines through to multi-million-pound racehorses. One size does not fit all. We're therefore exploring the concept of recognising high health equines for less burdensome processes for horses that meet that certain criteria. We rolled out the annual health and welfare review on the 7th of February, which is a first step for improved health and welfare of our national livestock. And we are fully focused on making it a success, and will learn as we make progress, including exploring ways of expanding the animal health and welfare pathway to include equines. And I'm happy to talk about that more later if necessary. I also know that a lot of hard work has been taking place in reforms to equine welfare in transport. This covers the fundamental welfare requirements for travelling horses safely and comfortably, and also establishing assurances and requirements in the context of the ban on exporting live equines for fattening or slaughter. Now, workshops covering several key areas such as temperature limits, headroom, and maximum journey times have taken place, and I'm very grateful to the industry for your engagement on this. Your input is invaluable to ensuring regulation meets its desired purpose while, and here's the point, while remaining proportionate and facilitating compliance. We have to remember that there is a difference between moving lambs in the middle of winter, 100 miles in a lorry, 4 degrees below, and moving a horse in a blanket a short distance. And we have to have rules proportionate, animal welfare at its heart, but we have to really understand what we're talking about, and I want to reassure you that we're not going to jump in and make the wrong decision on this. But progressing these exciting developments will further cement our globally respected reputation for equine health, for welfare, and we will truly be leading the way with digitalisation and traceability. Now, I've asked myself some very searching questions on Slido, and so I hope they come through. But I hope to have the opportunity in the panel session to answer some of your questions. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share some of these thoughts with you, and I look forward to other speakers. Thank you very much.
Richard. We're going to have questions at the end on the panel, and actually to link to the next talk, and if I say this affectionately with former reference to the Army, our very own Regimental Sergeant Major Georgina Crossman actually is the author of the diagram on the all the different organisations, and your predecessor, one of your predecessors said to me at my first National Equine Forum, which B are you, i.e. which British X? And I have to pay tribute to my former colleagues and the current chair, who's about to speak, David Mountford, chair of the British Horse Council, for bringing the industry together. He's had a varied career, including, as I say, in the Army, in the Veterinary Corps and the King's Troop. But what I would say is that his most important role for the people in this room and watching is as the current chair of the British Horse Council, which does that very thing, bring the disparate governance together and helps you in government hear one voice. So, David, thank you very much if you would speak.
Your Royal Highness, my Lord, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. Tim, thank you for that introduction. I'm sure my official boss, who pays my salary, who's sitting here today, wouldn't want to hear that my role as chair of the BHC is the most important job in my life. But I do take it very seriously. So, in memory of Sir Colin Spedding, I dug up a few Chinese proverbs for you today. The last one I think he would have appreciated the most. It does often appear that the British Horse Council, certainly this year, has been dashing round, gathering information, compiling responses, providing evidence, and has then had to sit on its hands and wait for government to take the next step. And these are the Bs, as Tim said, that have been involved with that work. Some of you may not know what the British Horse Council is, but as Tim said, we try to provide a channel through which the equine industry can join forces and engage with government to positive effect. The BHC directors that you can see there have expertise across sport horse and thoroughbred breeding, equine health, equine welfare, equestrian trade, equestrian sport, horse racing, research, and the leisure horse and the leisure rider. So hopefully we cover most of the bases. And I'll be following a route quite similar to Lord Benyon, but giving you the areas that we've worked on, the major issues we've worked on with government over the past year, but from the industry's perspective. I spoke to you last year about the animal health and welfare pathway for England and how equines would fit into it. You might remember that pathway is at heart a long-term collaboration between industry and government to support high standards of health, high standards of welfare, and to facilitate excellent trade. Last year, Lord Benyon referred to Defra's role in supporting the equine element of the Animal Health and Welfare Party. I don't know if I interpreted it correctly, but this year the support felt a little less positive. I hope I'm wrong. My family often tell me that I am. But we have been working with Defra's Animal Health and Welfare Pathway team this year and have narrowed down a wide range of aims, strategic aims, into 3 achievable, affordable, and critically important Stage 1 goals that you can see up there. I'll talk about equine ID and traceability next, but on a system for national equine disease protection, for years, we as an industry have been able to rely on the generous financial support and funding provided almost exclusively by the thoroughbred racing and breeding sectors. With the sad demise of the Animal Health Trust, there is now an opportunity to reassess and discover how best we can protect our horses against infectious diseases. And the Levy Board has commissioned a strategic review that will recommend options for equine disease protection across the country in the future. That review will be completed this spring, at which point industry and government will need to decide how to collaborate to provide a national equine disease protection system for the future. What is clear to all of us is that if we want to protect our horses' health and minimise the risks of our businesses being interrupted, we will no longer be able to rely solely on the funding of the thoroughbred sector. The whole industry will have to contribute, as will government. But it's not all about money. There will be much that government, horse owners, and sporting regulators can do to oil the wheels in a practical way. The last tranche is anthelmintic resistance, and you'll hear more about that from Claire Stratford later today. I won't dwell on it, but please take on board the fact that anthelmintic resistance is a genuine threat to your horses, your pastures, and potential contamination to them, which will damage their use for many years, and as a result of that, a damaging effect to your businesses. "20 years ago, when I had a lot more hair, I remember sitting in a room in Stoneleigh, listening to how equine ID would work through the power of paper passports and multiple passport issuing organisations. Today, we've got an exciting opportunity to plant a different tree. As the Minister has just said, unlike 20 years ago, last year government put out a broad, detailed consultation on equine ID. That consultation generated some 400 responses, and the report is available on the Defra website. The British Horse Council, conscious that the average horse owner, which to be honest is the most important cog in this wheel, was unlikely to fill out a government consultation, British Horse Council put together a survey with the help of Defra and others. That survey, although lengthy, generated some 3,500 responses, and the report is available in full on the British Horse Council website. Both surveys came up with exactly the same results. Most stakeholders feel that the current system is hugely flawed, and almost all stakeholders support a simple, digital, accessible system. So, that digital system, digital first equine ID, all sounds great, but what does it mean and what can it bring? Firstly, it's digital first because the digital record is a master record, not the paper record which can get lost, rained on, etc. It will provide it will provide the opportunity for owners to securely update it in real time in a secure fashion for free. But its potential is not just that it provides a great list of all the horses that we have in this country. It also, if we use it correctly, will enable us to provide better welfare for our horses, better disease surveillance, and better control of disease outbreaks in this country. It can prevent theft and fraud, and has the potential to enable smoother movements across borders. It could be cheaper, or should be cheaper, and easier for horse owners to comply with the law, and in time it could become self-funding. To my mind, it is central to the growth and modernisation of the equine industry in this country, and it really could be the rock on which the future of this sector can be built. But it is not just government's responsibility. Government must play its part, but we as a sector must work hard to make it work too. I have mentioned cross-border movements, and has already been said by the Minister, it is a challenge. But the reality is that since Brexit, the new bureaucracy, the costs and the associated delays have serious consequences. Horses and riders, some of our best, are relocating to the EU because life is just easier doing it that way. Some of our most prestigious international competitions in the UK are under threat. It may not be possible to attract the riders to come here. And our breeding industry, both from the AI and the natural covering side of things, are also being threatened because of these movement challenges. But the answer isn't simple. And we need to lead by example. As has already been mentioned, we can decide what regulations we put on horses coming into this country, but we can't dictate what regulations Ireland or France put on to horses that are moving from the UK into their countries. So we can play politics, or we can lead by example. I would prefer to see us lead by example. We also have a conundrum. We want good welfare controls of horses that are moving into this country, and we want those horses to be free from infectious disease. But we also want to minimise the level of inspections, the costs and the bureaucracy. So we have to navigate our way through that. Lord Benyon has already mentioned the potential for a two-tier system, and that's certainly something that we're pushing for. What we want to see is that if you are taking a lorry load of of horses with high health, i.e. those with a low biosecurity risk, then you should have a smooth, easy transition through customs. If your horses aren't low risk, if they have a higher biosecurity risk, then there should be tight controls and inspections. In time, we want to see that cover the welfare side of things as well. So your smoothest route will be if you can demonstrate excellent welfare and a high level of biosecurity. Where are we on now? Welfare and transport legislation. I was rather looking forward to this because I thought I was going to be able to lay into the Minister a little bit about the ridiculous suggestions on how we are, or the way it's looking like government was moving in terms of restrictions on temperature movements. But I've had an email in the last couple of days, and I think we've all felt reassured by what you've said just now, Minister, so I will move on. Finally, it won't have passed you by that some vaccines have been hard to come by over the last year. The lack of availability of certain vaccines has been caused by a raft of issues, from the availability of raw materials, IT failures, hiccups in the just-in-time manufacturing process. Government has been really helpful in allowing us to do what we can to deal with those problems by allowing import flexibility. But the situation has undoubtedly impacted on owners, on competitors, on sporting regulators, and has had a negative effect on the adoption of best practice vaccination protocols. As a result, we face a genuine increased risk of disease outbreaks within certain sports and associated risk of event cancellations. We must work hard within industry to restore that confidence in vaccination and make sure that we adopt across the board best practice protocols. Nonetheless, on the side, we are working with the pharma sector to try and develop ways that we can mitigate the risk and impact of vaccine shortages in the future. So, take-home message. Lots happening. As the Minister has said, there's some really exciting stuff, but progress can be frustratingly slow. We have a good relationship within the BHC with government. It's positive, it's forward-looking, and there's trust on both sides. And that, I believe, is because the industry is collaborating and working together to a positive end point. Leave you with one last proverb. Let's not make the wrong, short-sighted decisions. Let's not wait. Let's finish the job quickly. Thank you.
Marvellous job you do as the CEO of Beaver. If I could also say what a marvellous job, especially as their president is sitting in front row, that Roly is doing as a chair, the CEO of World Horse Welfare. You've seen his varied career, as I said, including in the army. But I think the most important thing for this audience is the way he has been a critical friend, a positive critical friend to many parts of the equestrian industry, and that's in part what he's talking about today. Roly.
Your Royal Highness, my Lord, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hugely grateful to the National Equine Forum for asking me to talk about a somewhat different perspective on the equine industry in a changing world, namely public acceptance. So, what does the public think? In a recent YouGov survey, 20% of the British public did not support the continued involvement of horses in sport under any circumstances, and a further 40% only supported this if welfare improves. Looking globally, the FEI's Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission recently conducted a survey on public perception of sport horse welfare. And when asked, more than half of the 14,000 respondents said welfare standards need improving. And among equestrian stakeholders, 78% of the nearly 28,000 respondents expressed the very same sentiment. So whilst we certainly shouldn't read too much into any individual survey, I believe this provides some good evidence that there is an issue here, and it's not just with the general public. And this can be the result of ignoring these sentiments. We can all see welfare compromises here. The public sees this too. Images and videos can be widely shared via social media, fueling public concerns. So if we ever did have overall control of the message, we certainly don't now. People trust what they see, not what we say. So if we are to starve our critics of oxygen, we really must take a zero-tolerance approach to welfare issues. In addition, some images that may look fine to us that people have grown up with horses may not look so fine to the general public, which we must also recognise. I know there are some who think that talking about public acceptance of horse sport, often referred to as social licence, risks scoring an own goal. I really would challenge this. Whether we like it or not, the world is talking about horse welfare, and we need to be part of that conversation, a conversation that needs to reach every aspect of equestrianism. And we can't achieve that if we only talk about it behind closed doors. Industries that hide their heads in the sand over social licensing issues tend to go under, and we don't want to be one of them. Consider what happened at SeaWorld. The effect of SeaWorld on the movie Blackfish was documented in a recent scientific paper, which used stock market data and interviews to illustrate how popular media can play an important role in shaping public attitudes. Blackfish caused negative publicity for SeaWorld and changed how people viewed marine mammal captivity. SeaWorld lost credibility by dismissing the documentary as lies, and their response was regarded as slow and inadequate. Park attendance decreased, SeaWorld were forced to stop their orca breeding program, and the company's market value dropped. Poorly handled public sentiment really can damage an industry. Poor handling notwithstanding, we need to accept and appreciate that society changes over time. Several animal use activities have been banned in many countries over the years, whilst offer now widespread criticism. Most of us, if not all, will have a visceral reaction to many of these images. To our 21st century sense of morality and ethics, it seems wrong to subject animals to these painful, degrading, or low welfare experiences. But the society's morality dial continues to shift. People are starting to view the use of horses for human entertainment or financial gain through an ethical lens. Now, try standing in the non-horsey public shoes in 2023 and look at these images, recognizing that there are horses here that are being used for human entertainment and or commercial gain. I suspect many of us in this room make our living out of equestrianism or use horses for leisure. The equestrian sector is rightly proud of the contribution it makes to Britain's society and economy. But we must recognise that the public sees many of us as a part of a wider industry, making money from horses, and they will judge us particularly harshly if we put commercial interests before equine welfare. So what can we do about this? We have researched how to best retain our social licence, using learnings from other industries. And from this, we know that trust is absolutely key. So in terms of improving public acceptance, here are 6 thoughts. Firstly, consider using engagement science to unpick what drives public acceptance. This example from the Australian live export industry showed that trust is the most important driver of acceptance, and the top 2 drivers of trust are responsiveness to public concerns and animal welfare issues. Secondly, embrace the values of the public and those within equestrianism who are calling for change. This certainly doesn't mean that we must bow to every public whim, but it does mean that we need to listen with humility, scrutinise our practice, and either change or defend the status quo with evidence. Here is a sustainability model for the animal agriculture industry, developed by a social licence expert. Note the requirement for both ethics and scientific validation. This shows where the goalposts are likely to be within equestrianism. And if engagement science supports this, it certainly will require a mind shift for many. Again, this is not giving in to the antis, it's doing the right things by our horses in an intelligent way and investing in our sport's future. And to help with this, the RBC is currently developing an ethical framework tool for the use of horses in sport at all levels. Thirdly, we must demonstrate that we are worthy of the public's trust by demonstrating responsibility towards horses. This responsibility is collective, relating to individuals as well as organisations, but what does the responsibility look like? For sure, it's illustrated by many of the talks today on the use of learning theory, awareness of pain-induced behaviours, and voluntary registration and regulation. But it also is about embracing regulation and going above and beyond the mandated minimum standards. Fourthly, because there's lots of good news to shout about, we need to tell the world what we are doing. But we must avoid the hollowness of words. We need to walk our talk, improve welfare, measure outcomes, as in these FEI data on rotational falls, because ultimately we will be judged on our actions, not our words. Fifthly, we need to be open-minded and keep learning. The welfare goalposts are constantly moving. Most of us know about the 3 Fs, friends, freedom and forage, and some now add a 4th, fun, which introduces the concept of positive welfare, focusing on animals to experience good things in life, not just avoiding bad things. But how do we know what is scientifically valid? We must learn how to evaluate new ideas and scientific findings based on the hierarchy of scientific evidence, or know who to ask or where to find it. Then we must embrace these scientifically or practically valid findings and practices. Finally, we all need to pull together on this. The public does not differentiate between the different branches of equestrianism. Finger-pointing damages us all, and in the final analysis, we all play for Team Equestrian. So where does this leave us? In short, we have a great collective opportunity to ensure the continued public acceptance of equestrianism. For sure, that acceptance requires a change of mindset for some, and public acceptance is a dynamic concept that won't stand still. But recognising the challenge is an important first step. Much of the equestrian world is already started on this journey and is enacting change. But we must broaden this out to encompass all of equestrianism. And we must pick up the pace. The decisions we make today and tomorrow will help shape horse sport for years to come. So for the good of the sport, let's be brave. Thank you very much.
If I could ask the three speakers to join me up on the podium, please. And we do have some questions, and the first question, I'm moving at speed because we're fractionally behind, is from the floor, and if the speaker could introduce themselves and ask the question.
Yes, David Cato from Retraining of Racehorses. My question is for the Minister. Thank you, Minister, for giving us an overview of strategy, direction of travel for health and welfare of horses. But I have a detailed question. I don't know if you can help me. We're all pleased to see a new Northern Ireland protocol being in the headlines this last week. So I wanted to know what are the implications of the Windsor framework for the movement of horses between GB and Northern Ireland?
Thank you. So, the island of Ireland has always been, or for decades, has been a single epidemiological area, as many of you will be aware. And those of us that have lived in Northern Ireland will remember when you travel there, either landing at Aldergrove or coming on a ferry, there is always an announcement about whether you've been on a farm or have you had access to livestock. So in one respect, that hasn't changed. What I hope will be noticed as we embed this into arrangements, which will be in about October, maybe September if we're lucky, because it has to go through the EU's processes as well, is that there will be as easy a movement as possible between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It should be almost seamless. There will be much less bureaucracy. I think there is more complicated issues to roll out. At about the same time, we're going to start our targeted operating model, and that is going to be of particular interest, particularly to racing and bloodstock, which is the transfer of animals from the Republic of Ireland, the EU, to the United Kingdom, and we are in lengthy discussions with the Welsh Government and the Scottish Government to make sure that our new targeted operating model will see the facilities we will be building at places like Kenryan, Holyhead, Pembroke, is going to allow for as near seamless transfer as possible. The other point about the Northern Ireland arrangements that we were debating last night is that what we have through the old protocol is deeply unsatisfactory facilities at Foyle, Larne, Belfast and Warren Point. And we passed last night a statutory instrument which means that we will build proper facilities. So equines coming across will be able to be inspected in a way that is safe for them and that is much better place to work. And we can recruit and retain, or the Department for Environment, Agriculture and Rural Affairs in Northern Ireland will be able to recruit and retain good people who will be working in good circumstances. At the moment they're working in marquees and freezing temperatures. They'll be able to have proper access to lorries and everybody should benefit. So less bureaucracy, better facilities, and hopefully with also benefit in terms of veterinary medical supplies as well, which is a big issue in Northern Ireland. So it's a lengthy reply, but it's very, very important issue.
Thank you, Minister. Comprehensive reply. I've got one more question for you and then one each for the other speakers that are coming up on Slido. I'm going to put the question, it's a two-parter, two different subjects, and also, even though I'm a trustee of BHS. This is not the reason they're asked. They've been upvoted by all. First question is about the possibility of rates relief to riding schools. And the second of that is the concern that the 2026 cut-off for registration of rights of way might be, which was pushed back against and said it was going to cancelled, might be brought back into force.
When I was in the army, you were asked something that was difficult. You'd usually say, "Not me, Sarge, I'm on potato peeling." Because business rates are actually the department for local government. But I am the Rural Affairs Minister, and so I do have some skin in this game. I will look at anything to reverse that rather shocking statistic I mentioned earlier. And there have been some rate relief through COVID. There has been some money through our COVID Recovery Fund, which has hopefully found its way to some of these facilities. But actually, I think that's tinkering with the problem. And whether there is a proper rate relief scheme that can be bespoke and that we can negotiate with the Treasury and the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Local Government, I can't tell you at this stage. These are sort of things that happen in budgets, and we have a budget soon. But I can tell you that we are very alive to this problem, and if there are clever things that we can do that you in this room or online can help me with, I will certainly give it some heft in government if I can.
And the rights of way 2026, which might be an interesting question, as probably a member of the CLA as well.
So we're really ambitious about access. And when people talk about access to the countryside, people immediately have a vision of walkers in garish colours walking on a footpath. It's much more complex than that. Now, there are many more people who want to cycle. There are many more people who want to ride horses. There are more horses in some parts of our countryside than there were before the internal combustion engine was invented. So access, when you talk about it, has to be looked at in a very holistic way. Now, we had this rather clunky arrangement, which was for the registration of ancient access paths, so bridleways and footpaths. We were going to have a cut-off date that would have allowed some certainty for landowners, because there would be no more that you could register after that date. But it wasn't working, and in a determination to try and find ways of getting people more access in the right way that didn't interfere with the management of rural businesses, biosecurity, health and safety, these are all things that need to be considered. We have moved that cut-off date, but we are still determined to make sure that at some point there is some clarity in this. What we do want to do is to make it easier. For example, if you have a stud or riding school or whatever, and you have a footpath that goes through it in a way that it could be dangerous for the walker, it could be damaging for the biosecurity of your livestock, we want to make it easier to amend those footpaths. And the best relationship for that to happen is local. The local organisations that work through their local authority to try and achieve this are much more efficient than a minister trying to mandate this from Whitehall. But we are going to end the registration of yet to be rediscovered rights of way, which is the big difficult one, at some point in the near future. We want to make it fair to people. We want to get more access where people want to go. And the green belt is a particular, more people live there. But we want to make it safe, and we want to make it better for the environment, better for biosecurity, and effective in a modern context in which we are living.
Thank you very much. Now, in the interest of time, probably one question for David and one question for Roly. David, in terms of the British Horse Council, which does include breeders on the steering committee, the role of Studbooks in equine ID, the positive role, how are you looking at that?
Thank you, Tim. A brilliant question, and I actually had a slide in which I had to take covering this, but I had to take it out because of lack of time. The work that the Studbooks do in managing the pedigrees, managing the breeds, is fantastic. It is it is brilliant. They've always done it brilliantly, and they will continue to do it brilliantly. The big change as part of this digitalisation, certainly from the way we're looking at it, is that you'll be separating the passport, the ID document, from the pedigree record, which is effectively just making sure that you have your birth certificate different from your passport. So the idea that this will, our hope is that this will enable the Studbooks to continue to do the excellent job that they've had to do in the past without the complicated challenges of managing equine ID and all the headaches that brings.
Thanks very much. And Roly, there's a question here which I think is very fitting in terms of you're talking to bring this together. How will Team Equestrian pull the industry together?
Sorry,
how will Team Equestrian, in parenthesis, pull the team together?
Team Equestrian will pull it together by being a team. So often you see, and I could give some examples, but I won't, but in the media, one aspect of equestrianism will say, well, things might be bad here, but they're worse there. So I think being a team is essential. And I do think we just need to open our eyes. There is so much good that goes on in equestrianism, and I do think the likes of racehorse Trainers Week in September, where many trainers will open their yards across the racing world. Brilliant. But why is it just in the racing world? It's got to be across equestrianism. And those kind of initiatives need to be really joined up. And thirdly, we just need to look through that public lens. Terms like giving the horse a kick and breaking horses in, might be very sort of natural to many, but they don't come across very well. So I do think in terms of how we talk about what we do and the great work that we do and the importance of the horse-human partnership and everything it gives to people, I think that is really, really important. So we just need to have that more public-facing and thinking way of talking about the brilliant sector that we work in.
Thank you very much, and if you could thank all the speakers for their excellent presentations and questions.